everybody, Lady Steam here. In this video, we are going to learn how to put together the Hanging Octopus Coaster from the January 2023 box of making. And so we're gonna start with taking the pieces apart, and then we'll move forward to learning a little bit more about it. As you can see, what we've got here is a hanging table. This is kind of all the rage right now. Lots of people are making them. And we've turned ours into a coaster. So you'll also have a coaster top. If you're looking at the video closely, you'll notice that no, I don't have a piece of acrylic in here. It just makes it a little easier for photographing. So our prototype coasters typically don't end up with the acrylic in it, but we'll put one in the one we're going to make for the video here. So this is our Hanging Octopus Coaster, and I'm just going to set it out of the way for now, and we're going to start this by looking at the pieces and parts that are in your bag. So that's where we're going to go to get started, and so let's do that now. So, as always, we're going to start with opening our bag. It should have a full list of the parts and pieces in it, and as far as I can tell, that list of parts and pieces is going to be right. You've got a bag that has some hardware in it, including some chains, and I'm going to put that on the side for now because I don't need it. A bag with a few small parts in it, and then lots and lots of pieces. So what we'll do now is talk about the pieces you need to prepare and how the stacks will go together for you, so you can then take it apart, decorate it, do all the things you need to it, and you're going to end up with being ready to build it when you come back to the video. So I'm going to flip my stack upside down, and we're going to start on the bottom. The very bottom piece of this is a little piece with the Steamy Tech logo on it. And above that, and little cutout corners, above that we're going to put two more pieces. One of them is going to have our bracket holes for our bottom bracket. And the second one is going to have holes in the corners where we can attach our chains to suspend the coaster. We're also going to, in our bag, have two sets of brackets. Two of them will be lefties and two of them will be righties, like so. And I'm going to pair them together. One pair is going to go on this piece and one pair is going to be suspended from the other piece. And if we open our other small bag, in it, you will find four of these cute little pieces, and these little brackets are the holding pieces that, again, are going to become a pair and get glued to the middle. Now, as you're preparing this, I've given you a lot of thickness in the wood for adjustability, and if you end up deciding you should put some paint on it, you'll have room for some of that. If you decide you want to glue them before you do your wood prep, I would strongly recommend using one of these pieces as a guide to make sure that they get glued straight. Because if they get too far out of alignment, they're really painful to put together. She says from experience. All right. So the other thing in that little bag while we're here is these three big gears and three small gears. Your three big gears are going to get stacked on top of each other like so, and you're going to want to make sure you get the through holes lined up. These are intended to be bubbles. I cannot promise that they will look like bubbles to you, but that is what they are intended to be. So really only the top layer of gear should be seen. Make sure you sand the bottom and make sure you sand the top of this gear, as well as sanding the bottom and top of our little gears as you're putting it together. So now we're ready to talk about the coaster. And when we build our coaster, we're going to actually put it together a little bit backwards, and we're going to build a very, very big stack of parts. As you can see, we've got just a few pieces here. So we're going to start with this piece, and we're actually not going to put this on first, but this is going to be your bottom. And attached to it, glued to it, will be this piece, and this is going to be our holder for the other half of the bracket. So the only time somebody will see the bottom of this is if they look underneath. From the top, the only thing they'll see is this outer ring. Now, we've also provided you with an extra ring here, and we'll talk about that in a second. When we put this together, actually we're going to do this last, these pieces are going to get glued on the very bottom, and we're going to glue those together. And the reason this ring exists is so we can align the parts and pieces carefully. And you can decide, once you've done it and got it aligned, if you want to put a line of glue around it and leave this on the bottom of the coaster. You just have to make sure you leave enough room for our chains to hook, or if you want to pull it out. So my recommendation is going to be, since this isn't a piece we're actually using, to gently break it in half before you start building your coaster, and then you'll be able to stick it together and use it for alignment properly. And we'll talk about how that works, but that'll give us the ability to glue our pieces in politely. So I'm just going to set that over here out of the way. And now we're going to start in the pieces that matter in terms of smoothness. So our next layer will be this one. And we're going to want to make sure that we glue these pieces down that we sand this, no, don't glue them down. I'm going to sand this ever so carefully. That's the bottom of your coaster. So it may end up being that you want that to be the ocean. And this is going to be our planetary gear that actually spins. So our 3 little floaty bubbles are going to go here. And our stack of big gears is going to go on top of this like so. So you want to make sure that this analyst will spin nice and smoothly, and that our gears will spin nice and smoothly against the analyst. We're going to end up gluing these 2 layers together as we do this. And we're going to drive it by spinning this center piece on the top. Now, above that, we're going to put this little adapter. One of the things we have to do when we do a design is figure out how to make something buildable. And the piece in the design that I couldn't figure out was how do we adapt from round, which is what I really wanted for the bottom, so we had room to put our chain hooks on, to octagonal, because, it's an octopus, and so it has to have 8 sides for the coaster. That's just how things work. So I made this cute little octagonal adapter that you'll be able to glue on. And this large, thick octagonal piece is going to go on top of it. And then above that is where your octopus head is going to go. And your octopus head will sit that way, just like that. And then we're going to have some more fun. So I've got my octopus head here. And now I'm going to add a couple of extra layers before we can put the acrylic on. So these are what we're going to call thick rings. You'll notice how those are wider than this one. So to make this all go together smoothly, we need one thick layer, so that when we sit our acrylic in here, everything works. But I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to put one more layer here, like so, get that a little higher. And then I'm going to set a thin layer in, and then when we build it, we're going to put the acrylic on top of that, like so. Except I don't want to set it in because I don't want to have to fight with it. And I want you to be able to see how cool this is going to look when it's done. Then I'm going to add another thick layer. So that's going to be our 3 pieces that actually contain the acrylic. And finally, on top of everything will be our little tentacle top piece that we're going to align as we glue it in like so. Now what that gets us is a perfectly aligned coaster that we can then put the additional pieces on top of. So we're going to then glue this here, and we're going to glue this little guy on this side, and we're going to glue this. Whoops, this guy goes on this side, and the little guy goes on that way. And you can decorate and decorate and decorate. So sand, stain, decorate, and then come back and we'll put it all together. All right, now that you've done all your decorating, which I'm sure was amazing, we're going to go ahead and build this project. And what we want to make sure we do is we're going to build it in kind of two halves, actually kind of three parts. But I'm going to take my 3 rectangles, plus my big wood circle, and my little surfboard here. By the way, that's what I'm calling it, I don't know why. And my 4 big hangers and my 4 little hangers, and put them over there out of my way for the moment. And now I'm going to work just on building the coaster itself. So we'll start with the coaster, which is kind of fun. If you've built one of our planetary gear sets before, this is backwards from that. So don't glue anything if I don't tell you to glue it. And Professor Steam is helping me with the filming today, and he's going to tell me if I do it wrong. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our gears on. And so I want to do that first by building this gear stack here, which requires the skill of alignment. And I want to make sure I get these lined up perfectly, and we're going to glue all of this together. So my glue is here and ready to use, and if you're going to align anything, make sure you use a screw to do it. Now, in your hardware bag, you should have a set of feet. You should have 3 short screws and 4 nuts and 2 long screws. I put 2 long screws in because mathematically this 3/4 inch guy should work. But when we built it, we discovered they really wanted a little more thickness. So depending on what you've done, you may use either the 3/4 or the 7/8 inch screw in building it. But I'm going to go ahead and put a screw facing up. Now, the one hint to know about gluing things together, and we'll use this all through this, is you always want to put glue on the smaller piece. In this case, those are both the same size, so I'm just going to gently put glue on it all the way around. Try to not let any glue get too close to the teeth when you're doing that, so that it doesn't ooze out into the teeth. And I think I have them lined up. I know where the holes should line up. So I'm going to use my screw as the alignment point, and then I'm going to squeeze on the teeth to make sure everything stays nice and straight. With the super glue you get in your box of making packs, what you'll notice is it dries reasonably fast for super glue. You can get other cyanoacrylate that dries a little slower. But this particular CA sticks pretty fast, but it does give you a few seconds of repositioning, so be careful. And once you push down, you're pretty much set. So I've got my stack of 3 gears here. That center hole is nicely aligned. Oops, that one decided to slide, like I said. Be careful. Make sure everything is nice and aligned. The other trick to alignment is you can turn things sideways. And if you've got more than 1 layer in your stack, you'll be able to align things that way. So now we're ready to glue those, to screw those gears in. So I've got my little 3/8 inch screws, and I'm going to put them in the holes like so. And you'll notice that these holes are small enough you'll actually need to use a screwdriver to get them going. But that makes it convenient because that means we can wait to put the nuts on until we're done adjusting everything, and we can make sure that everything is exactly in the place we want it to go and exactly as tight as we want it to be. before we put the nuts on them. So I'm going to put these 3 screws in. And as you'll notice, I'm not tightening them down all the way. If I tightened them down all the way, the gears wouldn't spin. So I'm going to put them just shy of that. If you need an easy test for that, gently tighten it till it just stops. And then back it up a 1/4 turn or a 1/2 turn and make sure you can really easily spin it. And then I'm going to do that on my 3rd gear here. The same one. So these are the 3 we need to attach. We're not actually going to, and see that one's too tight. I'm going to back it up a little bit. We're not actually going to attach this middle one until the very end. But if I want to play with it for the moment, I can put my little screw through it, set it in place, and I should be spinning nicely all the way around like so. So, now that we've done that, and we've got that spinning oh so nicely, and everything is perfect, we're ready to put the nuts on the back of those 3 gears. So I'm going to flip this over like this. Put a little dot of glue on them. Little is the operative word. And then I'm just going to set my nuts on here and loosely finger tighten them down flat. Now, a couple of things to be aware of as this is your first project. Nuts don't exist in my world for tightening. Nuts exist usually in my world just for keeping things in place. So we want to make sure these keep spinning. If you got the glue got away with you and got a lot on it, which I'm sure has happened before, then just gently spin them to make sure everything is still good. Now, the next step is we're going to start to build the top half of our coaster. If we look at this closely, you'll notice when I spin it that analyst is attached to the entire top half of the coaster. So we're going to slowly start to build the top half of our coaster. And that starts with our analyst. That's going to get put on right here like this. And you'll notice if we spin it, those 3 gears around the outside spin. And we're going to put this and glue this to that to make those 2 layers spin. So, first thing we need to do is put the glue on the back of this adapter piece. That's what I've called it. And again, this is my littler piece, so I'm going to put glue here. And I'm going to align this to the outside of this circle, like so. And since I can lift it up, I can actually put my fingers all the way around the outside edge. If you get glue oozing out, ooh, it's trying to escape me. If you get glue oozing out from the outside edge, you can wipe it. Once you push down, you're going to lock it into place. But don't be afraid to get your fingers dirty. You've got to get glue all the way around that. Now, the next thing we're going to put on this coaster is this guy. And so this one wants to align to the inside edges of that lower octagon like so. And if you haven't glued those 2 together yet, you can glue these 2 pieces together first. This is actually, like I said, my adapter piece. So we're going to glue those 2 together. And because this is the smaller piece, again, I'm going to put glue here and glue these 2 layers together like so. And we're starting to build the frame of our coaster. Get this switched to octagon land. And of course, the better you get it lined up, which I am not always best at, the better it will look. Flip that over, make sure that's all nice and glued down. And so now I have that conversion, and we're ready to build our octagonal coaster on top of it. And the next layer that goes on is Sid the cephalopod. So we need to get our bottom layer of gears in if we're going to make that work. And we're going to glue this whole thing together. And there are two ways you can do this. You can go down from the top or up from the bottom. I know, that's obvious. But it's easier probably to start with going up from the bottom. You'll have to unscrew this once we're done, but this will make sure you're all perfectly aligned all the way around with gluing Sid the octopus's head on. I don't know why his name is Sid Professor, but he seems like a Sid to me. Remember, there's no rush building any of this. This is supposed to be fun. No pressure at all. All right, so coaster, we're gonna put this analyst layer on top and make sure it's all lined up properly to spin nicely around on the circle like so. We're going to put our center gear here and just make it in. And you'll notice here's what's interesting about planetary gears. I can spin from the middle and make everything go, or I can spin from the outside to make everything go. So in this case, we're going to build it so we spin from the outside. So we want to make sure that gear is loose. And we're just going to glue Sid the octopus's head on top like so. And we're going to go again all the way around the outside edge with glue to glue our coaster together. Carefully align that. Use your fingers on the outside edge or sit it up on the edge. On its edge so you can make sure the sides are flat. And flat sides are really important for this coaster. So the flatter and more even you can get these three surfaces when you build them, the better those tentacles will do at sticking to the piece correctly. And now I'm ready to back this screw out and turn it upside down, because I've got all of those pieces ready to go. So I'm just going to take this screw out and flip it over and make my coaster be one solid piece. And here's the thing I want to try. That looks like it was sticking out an awful long way. So let's see if the 3/4 inch screw instead of the 7/8 inch screw will work. Yeah, I think I got plenty of room here. Yeah, that's fine. And I've got plenty sticking out the bottom. And I can spin this all day long, and those gears will all spin. And as you look at it at an angle, you can see the pieces that they're spinning around to. So I'm going to go ahead here and put my drop of glue on this to get this all together nicely. And if you got your nut on too tight, you can back it up a little bit, but I'm still splinting really nicely. And as I add some additional layers, it will help me hold it and everything will work perfectly. So now, I'm gonna do one more thing on the bottom, and then we're gonna put the bottom parts of the coaster together, I think. Just to be different. So one of these needs to go on the bottom here to cover up those screws and get them out of the way of the next step in the process. So I'm going to put this here like so. And try to center it a little bit, so if I need to get the screws out for some reason I can, but that shouldn't be the case here. And now I've got two layers and I've got a nice flat surface here. Because of the way the side pieces go on and because we designed this for the 7/8 inch screw, I'm going to go ahead and add another layer of thick hole pieces here. I make sure everything fits together perfectly, like so. And that gets me a nice, strong hole attachment for spinning my coaster. So before I add the rest of the pieces to this, I want to put this bottom layer on, if the glue will hold. Don't let go too early, is the moral of the story. So, how many of you, when you build Steamy Tech projects on the box of making, wait and watch me build the entire video before you decide what you're going to do for gluing things together? I am constantly making mistakes. You certainly don't have to, but I'm just curious to see how many of you have decided that's the only way to do this. All right, now we're ready to glue this on. And you'll notice that there's no alignment methodology to do that. So, as I did earlier, I got these in two separate pieces, and I can stick them together like so, and then they'll give me an edge surface to align to when I glue this on, and I'll have something I can push against to do that. So, I've got those nicely held there. And I'm going to put my glue again on the smaller piece, not the bigger piece. But this is the hardest step, I think, in this coaster, is making sure this gets aligned. Because if it does not, then A, the vertical tentacles will not stick properly. And B, you won't have enough place to put your chain hooks. So get that nice and centered. Push down and make sure it's nice and secure. Everything is good. We're still centered. And then once you've done that, you can pull those two pieces off that you broke in half on that ring. And you'll end up with a nice centered piece. So that's the clever way to get that bottom glued on. So now we have a spinning coaster. And I guess if you really wanted to, you could leave it like that and just build the top of it and be done with it, but that would not be any fun. So, now what I want to do, now that I've got this part built, is I want to build the base and attach those two things together. And then we'll finish the top of the coaster. So we're going to start with our bottom here. And on our bottom, you'll notice we have the bottom part that has the Steamy Tech logo on it. We've included a set of feet. You may decide that for your tables, you'd rather have the strength in this of not having feet on it to make it risk being tippy at all, or you can put the feet on it. So I'm going to take that bottom piece, and I'm going to glue this to it next, like so. That's a prep step in our build. We're going to build that. And notice I got glue scooching out the edges, which I'm going to wipe off. Yes, you're going to get your fingers gluey. If you come to Steamy Tech and don't get glue on your fingers, you're not doing it right. So they tell me. Now, I could glue this in. The challenge with gluing this in is if I do that and it's at all out of alignment, it makes putting these pieces in much harder. And I learned that the hard way. I think I've got enough width that you can do that now. Looks like we're loose enough. We can probably get away with it. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to kind of just leave this sitting here for the moment, so we got a little bit of play. And I'm going to use this as my reference point to glue the rest of these pieces together. So I've got a pair of pieces here that we're going to use as our lower brackets. So we're going to put glue on those, glue them together, make sure they look nice and lined up, and then I'm going to drop them in this to make sure they really are lined up and will fit in my holes. I'm sure none of the rest of you have problems with alignment, but I occasionally am not perfectly skilled. Then I'm going to take this pair and we're going to do the same thing with it. Now, make sure you get glue around that little tip there. Be gentle with it. And because I want to make sure I get those perfectly aligned, I'm going to go to my chain set here and have handy dandy on the side my little set of 3 jump rings. So I'm ready to use them if I need to for alignment at the very end. So I'm going to line them up, and I'm going to again drop them in a base, make sure that looks good. And if you're having trouble getting those aligned and making sure you're aligned, you can take one of the small rings here and pull it over the hook and make sure those stay together like so. And that gives you a good way to make sure that those are lined up properly and aren't, because if those are misaligned and you can't get the chains in, then you have a little bit of a problem. The trick on getting these in, by the way, is slide them all the way forward, dunk, 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 this way, and then wrap it all the way around. If you try just to slide it in right at the very beginning, you won't have enough width and it'll get weird. So if they're lined up properly, it won't be a problem at all. Okay, so I've done the first pair. Let's do the second pair the same way so that we're ready to put this together and use it. So here's my second little brackets. And again, I'm going to make sure they look good to me. And then I'm going to stick them in here to make sure they really are lined up. And make sure that middle section is really lined up. And we'll do the same thing with our dinosaurs. I've got long necks that curve. They gotta be dinosaurs, right? And again, I'm gonna make sure I get a little bit of glue all the way around that loop. That's where the strength of the whole project lies, is in that loop. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Take those two, slide them into my hole. And at the bottom, I can make sure this is all lined up and smooth and together, and then I can hook that all together at the top. And if I'm worried about that alignment, which I'm not, I can just put that jump ring on it and make sure that stays nice and complete. Now, I pre-built all these for you in hardware so you wouldn't have to worry about jump rings and chains. But there's a lot of choices in what you use for hooks and clasps, and if you don't like my metal and you don't like the silver, you can do something else there as well. So now that I've got this piece built and I can attach this piece to it easily, now I can go and I can start to glue the whole world together. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to glue these two to this, and then I'm going to glue that down to make sure it stays lined up nice and smoothly. So to glue these in, for the middle one, all I want to do is I just want to put a little bit of glue right here in these little middle tracks. I'm also, when I add the big one, going to put some glue here and outside here to get that glued down nicely. And I'm also going to put a little bit of glue here. Now I'm going to run one bead of glue along the outside when we're done, and I'll show you what that looks like. But that will give us the ability to make sure everything is nice and strong. And since the whole strength of this thing is in this bracket, we want to make sure that's good. And now I'm going to put my glue on this surface. To glue that surface down, and I'm going to put a line of glue in these holes. So when these go into the holes, they're all nice and solid. So drop that in. Make sure that all is straight on the edges and we're not twisted sideways there. And then the trick I'm going to use to make sure everything really stays solid is I'm going to use a bead of super glue on this surface right here. If you have Instaset, you can then use your Instaset to instantly dry that glue. We sell some on our website. If you don't have any Instaset, that's perfectly fine. If you really want to make sure it's supported, you can use baking soda. Oh, look, my Instaset magically appeared. But I'm just going to make sure all four surfaces of that are really solid. And I'm just going to use this lovely Instaset spray to make sure it all dries perfectly. Or wait patiently. Any of the above will work, but the Instaset gets it all put together for me very quickly. And so now I want to put that bracket on this thing. And we're going to do the exact same thing. Although this time all we have to add is our little tiny guy here when we're ready to glue that down. So I'm going to make sure I've got my glue here to attach that, and a little bit in here. I'm going to put glue in the middle of this so we get those pieces glued down nice and solidly to the coaster themselves. And I'm going to put a little bit of glue on one side of these. Let me do this. Like I said, I made the holes wider just to make it easier on you. If I make it just the right width, it's really hard to put together. And everybody scolds me for that too. And I'm going to put my glue back here. And we're just going to kind of do this all in one big piece. I fought and fought and fought with the alignment on this, by the way, which is why these pieces are big and why I am pointing this out ever so carefully, because if the alignment is wrong, it's just annoying. But if you do it this way, you're all going to get good alignment. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did on the other one, which is I'm going to make sure my super glue is really set by running beads of glue here and here. Make sure all these pieces are nice and solid. And then I'm going to use my Instaset to dry it quickly so I don't have to wait. If you aren't using Instaset, you want to wait and make sure that glue is all very, 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 very dry before continuing. So the way this is going to go together is we're going to use those jump rings to build our hanging part in the middle, like so. And we're going to take the 4 chains I've made. They're all 25 links long. At least I sure hope they are. According to my measurement and counting and ever so serious expertise, they should all be the same. If you have trouble with them, feel free to reach out, but I believe they will all be 25 links. And I can send you a replacement set if I need to. But while we're waiting for that to dry, I'm just going to hook these bottom chains on, like so. This all going nicely here. And now this is the part that is easiest with 2 people. I've been doing this for a while, so I think I'm okay, but it will be much easier if you have help. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take this set of 3 jump rings, and I'm going to put the one on the top part like so, just like we learned how to do earlier. And I'm going to flip this over. Well, maybe I'm going to put it up here. It has to pull up, and I was letting it go down, so that wasn't working. Let's work with gravity instead. All right, I'm going to put it on the bottom first. Gravity is your friend, by the way. For those of you who have not yet learned that, gravity is your friend. So now we're going to do this bottom one, which is actually the top, and now I have a hanging hook. And if you have 2 people, this is where it's easier. And I'm going to slowly go around and gently pull down to attach these. So the first one is pretty easy. And the second one is pretty easy, because we don't have to put much pressure on it to do that. Now, when we get to the third one here, what's happening is the pressure against me is starting to get strong. And if I let go of it here, it will just collapse. So I'm going to continue to hold on to it, and I'm going to take this 4th hook, and you may actually have to push down a little bit on this middle section to get yourself enough room. Do it gently. If you are super, super strong, I suppose it's possible you could break it. And that is a hanging table, like you've seen many, many, many places these days. So now I'm ready to add the rest of my parts. And this is a little rough, by the way, because I didn't sand any of the pieces before we started. But there we go. So now we're ready to put the tops on. And what I'm going to do is we'll slowly work our way up. And I'm going to put this layer on next, just like we've been doing. Make sure it's nice and square and all of the pieces are aligned properly. If it's easier to build with the coaster apart, you know how to take the hanging part off. But make sure you get all these edges perfectly flat because we're going to glue to them. So you want to make sure that what you're doing is getting those edges perfectly flat. Okay. I'm going to use another big ring here to do the same thing. So I'm going to put a layer of glue on this next one. Like so. And that should be good. And now we're going to put in what we call our thin ring, which will hold our acrylic. So I'm going to put that on next. I am clearly not perfect, but I'm getting there. We're going to put it on the thin one because that's the side that's smaller, and we don't want glue bulging everywhere and anywhere. The other one's recording. We're okay. We can go from there. I'll squeeze that down like so. So we've got our view here. And then we're ready to put our acrylic in. Now, depending on how much time you've let it dry and how much time your acrylic, your glue has spent drying, you may decide you want to give this 20 minutes overnight even before you put your acrylic in. The one thing to know is that acrylic and super glue don't mix. So if you've got glue all over your fingers at this point, stop and get the glue off your fingers. I'm going to start the back side of this as well. Like so. And since I've started the top, I can just set this in. Now, since I said glue and acrylic don't mix, here's what I'm going to do in this case. I'm going to go ahead and put this in. Make sure it's in nice and tight, all the way in flat, so I can put my ring on top of it. And then I'm going to kind of be careful when I put my glue the rest of the way around it. When we're using round coasters that have really, really thin rings, that's harder. This is harder to do, and you can't do this practically. You've got to put the glue on this top layer before you do anything else. But because this is such a nice, big, thick ring, I can actually do that and peel this top piece off. And now I'm ready to set on my last thick ring here. And that's going to go on like so. And again, I'm paying very careful attention to make this sure that this is all as even and as straight as possible, because I need to be able to glue to these surfaces. And now I have a real coaster with acrylic in it and everything. And I need to do one last layer here, and that is to start to put the tentacle layer on. So my tentacle layer is going to go on top of it like so. And I'm going to put my glue here very carefully. Don't let it splatter and get onto your acrylic. That would be bad. Very, 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 very bad. And make sure you align this. This is the middle bottom. It's gonna go right here like so. And I'm gonna line everything up perfectly. If you can, make sure at least the two top layers are nice and straight, because we want to glue to that. And you have a coaster. Now we have one final step. Next, actually decide if you want to put the feet on it. If you do, this is when I would recommend flipping it over. I'm going to put 4 little dots of glue in the little circles on the bottom. And carefully stick these feet to those. Yes, they are self-sticky. No, the self-sticky is not strong enough. Now I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to glue my tentacles on top. So this big guy is going to go in the middle right here, and I'm going to start with him. And as you can see, he's actually covering all of the first several layers of this. So I'm going to put lots of glue here. If anything is going to break in your coaster while you're using it, it's probably going to be these pieces. But I couldn't resist this design because it's just so cool. So I'm going to put that layer of glue on like so. I'm going to make sure the top is ever so flat and the pieces are lined, the lines are lined up around the corner. And sit and hold this for a moment. Like so. And notice we can still spin all the way around. And then I'm going to take this guy, which is this edge right here. And again, I'm going to line up those holes. So I'm going to put my glue on the back of this. Glue it in this way. Make sure that's nice and level. And then I'm going to come over to this side and we're going to do the same thing here and align this with the holes there. Lines up to the top so everything looks perfect. There should be enough depth in the etching that you can actually tell where those lines are if you need guidance when you're doing it from the and looking at it from the top. Come on, quit sliding for me. Get it lined up the way you want it to and squeeze it on nice and tight. And at that point, there you have it, your very own hanging octopus coaster. Yay! Thanks so much for watching, and we hope we see you soon on another box of making project.